And they were treating me horribly. You know, they would see me and they would turn the other way, only because I wanted to go to the police.
Today is a wake-up call.
William Bowen is a former church elder who was kicked out when he challenged the policy of demanding 2 eyewitnesses to substantiate abuse.
There's a database that they maintain on child molesters that are reported within the church. Most of these people, by and large, are never reported to the police.
This afternoon, as marchers tried to deliver their stuffed lambs at headquarters,
What happened to Matthew 18? They're crushing our brother.
several church members escorted us through the gates to meet the public information officer for the governing body. Do you encourage parents or the child to go to police?
Of course. If a state requires it, then we even let them know that. The Bible shows the civil authorities have a definite responsibility that God permits.
You don't try to suppress information from getting out?
Not at all. In fact, we just recently sent a letter to all congregations advising them that parents have the right to go to.
But the lambs aren't being silent anymore. I'm Mary Murphy, WB11 News.
Before William Bowen became one of Watchtower's most visible critics, he was exactly the kind of man the organization trusted. He was a second-generation Jehovah's Witness. His father reportedly served as an elder for more than 40 years. Bowen pioneered, worked at Bethel from 1977 to 1979, served as an elder for approximately 15 years, participated in judicial committees, and eventually became the coordinating elder of a congregation in western Kentucky. He knew the language of loyalty, the importance of confidentiality, and the consequences of challenging the organization's authority. Then, while handling confidential congregation records, Bowen said he discovered information concerning earlier serious misconduct involving a minor and a fellow elder. What he found was disturbing, but what headquarters reportedly told him to do next would change the direction of his life. This was no longer an abstract debate over doctrine. In Bowen's mind, a child could be in danger, and the procedures he had trusted appeared to be standing between that child and meaningful protection. If you value carefully documented stories about the people who challenged Watchtower from the inside, subscribe to Kingdom Wisdom. Because William Bowen's story forces us to confront a disturbing question. When an elder discovers that a child may be in danger, who is he expected to protect, the child or the organization? In this video, we will examine Bowen's history inside Jehovah's Witnesses, his confrontation with Watchtower procedures, the creation of Silentlambs, and the personal price he paid for speaking publicly. This is the story of an insider who followed the rules until he believed those rules were protecting the wrong people. The insider Watchtower trusted. Bowen did not approach this controversy as an outside activist searching for a scandal. His identity had been shaped inside the organization from childhood. According to the history later published by Silentlambs, his father served as an elder for over 40 years. Bowen pioneered as a young man, served at Bethel between 1977 and 1979, received organizational assignments, and spent around 15 years as an elder. That background matters because elders are entrusted with sensitive congregation information. They investigate serious wrongdoing, sit on judicial committees, recommend discipline, and maintain confidential records. Bowen understood that system not as a distant critic, but as one of the men responsible for applying it. His reputation, family history, spiritual authority, and social world were connected to Watchtower. There had already been a warning. According to Bowen's own account, he was removed as an elder in 1992 after refusing to support the appointment of a man connected to a serious child safety matter. He was reappointed in 1994 and again received organizational privileges. That experience had taught him something uncomfortable. Resisting an internal decision could cost him his position, even after years of faithful service. Still, Bowen remained. He continued serving and continued trusting the organization's chain of authority. That makes what happened next more significant. He did not immediately go to the media, launch a website, or declare war on Watchtower. He first tried to work through the system he knew. But in 2000, he encountered a case that, according to him, could not be reduced to a confidential file or settled by quietly adjusting someone's congregation privileges. According to Bowen, while working with confidential congregation records around the year 2000, he found information describing an earlier admission concerning deeply inappropriate conduct toward a minor. The person involved was reportedly a fellow elder Bowen knew. The discovery was already serious, but Bowen said the situation became more urgent when information emerged, suggesting that another child might also be at risk. Bowen says he followed the approved chain of authority. He contacted other overseers and Watchtower service and legal departments. Silentlambs' account says 3 presiding overseers from nearby congregations became involved, and Bowen spent months pressing for action before another child could be harmed. This is where the moral contradiction becomes impossible to dismiss. A religious organization can classify serious misconduct toward a minor as a grave sin. It can remove a person from an appointed position or convene a judicial committee. But a child facing possible harm does not need only an internal religious judgment. A potentially criminal matter requires trained investigators, child protection professionals, and public authorities with the power to gather evidence and intervene. Elders may be sincere. They are not detectives, forensic interviewers, prosecutors, or social workers. Watchtower's two-witness rule has often been central to this controversy, so it must be explained accurately. The organization did not say that 2 witnesses were legally required before anyone could contact the police. Rather, it applied the biblical requirement of 2 witnesses, or equivalent corroborating evidence, when deciding whether internal judicial action could be taken if the accused denied the allegation. Watchtower representatives have also said that elders comply with applicable reporting laws, and that members are free to report allegations to secular authorities. But the practical obstacle remains deeply troubling. Serious misconduct involving minors normally happens in secrecy. There is rarely a second eyewitness standing in the room. If internal guilt depends heavily on a confession, another witness, or sufficient corroboration, the denial of the accused can stop the congregation's judicial process, even when a child's account is credible enough to demand professional investigation. And when confidentiality is treated as a spiritual obligation, families may come away believing that warning others or going outside the congregation would be an act of disloyalty. Bowen now stood between 2 competing responsibilities. One was obedience to organizational procedure. The other was the possible safety of a child he might continue seeing at congregation meetings. He had already learned what challenging an internal decision could cost him. This time, however, the cost of doing nothing appeared far greater. The most disturbing evidence associated with Bowen's account emerged in a recorded telephone conversation later broadcast by NBC's Dateline and examined by the BBC's Panorama. Bowen identified it as a call with Watchtower's legal department, in which he sought guidance about a suspected case involving a young girl and her father. In the recording, the official advised Bowen to question the accused again. If the man denied it, Bowen was told to walk away and leave it for Jehovah. Consider what that instruction meant in practice. A local elder without specialized investigative training was told to return to the accused and ask again. The direction depended heavily on what that person chose to admit, and if the answer was no, the elder seeking help could be told to step away. There was no forceful direction in that recorded exchange to contact police or child protection authorities. A possible danger to a child remained framed primarily as a confidential religious matter. That exposes the difference between managing sin and investigating a possible criminal matter. An internal process asks whether there is enough evidence for religious discipline. A child protection investigation asks whether a child may be unsafe and what must be done to protect that child. They are not the same question. If the accused denied the allegation, the elder asking for help could be told to walk away. The file could remain confidential. Parents might never know what concerns had been recorded, and the child would live with the consequences of a decision made behind closed doors by men whose training was religious, not investigative. Watchtower publicly rejected the claim that its policies were designed to protect people accused of harming minors. In 2001, a spokesperson told the Washington Post that members were always free to report child safety concerns to secular authorities, that elders followed applicable reporting laws, and that strong circumstantial or corroborating evidence could sometimes serve in place of a second eyewitness. Later public statements likewise insisted that Jehovah's Witnesses strongly condemn such conduct and have policies intended to protect children. Those statements deserve to be included. But they do not erase the question created by Bowen's reported experience. If members were genuinely free to report, why did an elder with years of experience believe that contacting authorities placed him in direct conflict with the organization? Why did he spend months pressing internal departments instead of receiving an immediate, unmistakable instruction that the child's safety came first? And why did the recorded guidance focus on questioning the accused and avoiding trouble rather than ensuring that trained authorities evaluated the risk? Bowen's answer was to stop participating in the process. In a letter dated December 31, 2000, he resigned as an elder. According to his account, he personally reported the matter to authorities in January 2001. The decision meant surrendering a position that had defined him for years. Yet resignation was only the beginning. Once Bowen spoke anonymously online, messages began arriving from current and former witnesses who said they had encountered the same wall of secrecy. He had given up his title, but he had not yet understood how many people were waiting for someone on the inside to break the silence. Bowen initially posted about the issue anonymously, using the name Silentlambs. The phrase came from his resignation letter, in which he described vulnerable children as silent lambs looking to elders for protection. After he began writing online, he says he was overwhelmed by private messages from current and former Jehovah's Witnesses describing serious child safety allegations, institutional silence, and the isolation of trying to speak inside their congregations. According to Silentlambs' published history, Bowen sold 2 rare Jehovah's Witness books to a collector for $1,000 and used the money to launch the website in March 2001. What began as one elder's protest quickly became a platform where affected individuals could tell their stories, often for the first time, and learn that they were not alone. The project also connected people with media attention, attorneys, therapy information, and other forms of practical support. The website revealed another painful contradiction. People who said they could not speak safely inside their congregations needed a former elder's website to find one another. The institution offered committees, confidential files, and internal discipline. Silentlambs offered them a public voice. A personal account did not prove every allegation, and responsible journalism still required verification. But the reports were increasingly difficult to dismiss as isolated exceptions. Bowen insisted that journalists center affected individuals rather than turn him into the main personality. His challenge was covered by The Washington Post in 2001. NBC's Dateline aired Witness for the Prosecution in May 2002. Wired examined Silentlambs as an online refuge and resource for people seeking support, and the BBC's Panorama later investigated the controversy. Bowen's knowledge of judicial committees, congregation records, and the internal chain of authority made him useful to reporters and attorneys trying to understand how these cases were processed. The transformation was now complete. Bowen had gone from enforcing Watchtower procedure to explaining that procedure to the outside world. One confidential case had become an international discussion about whether organizational loyalty and secrecy were being placed ahead of the safety of children. If you were an elder and received the instructions Bowen said he received, what would you have done? Followed the internal direction, or contacted the authorities immediately? Share your view in the comments, but please protect the privacy of everyone affected. Speaking publicly placed Bowen in conflict with the organization that had shaped almost his entire life. This was not simply the loss of a volunteer title. Among Jehovah's Witnesses, congregation membership can define a person's friendships, family relationships, spiritual identity, and hope for the future. To be marked as disloyal can mean losing far more than a seat in a kingdom hall. In 2002, Bowen was disfellowshipped on the stated accusation of causing divisions, according to contemporary reporting and his own account. It would be inaccurate to say that Watchtower officially disfellowshipped him for reporting the matter to police. The recorded charge was causing divisions. Bowen and his supporters, however, viewed the action as retaliation for his public campaign against the organization's handling of serious child safety allegations. That distinction does not make the contrast less disturbing. The people accused in these stories were entitled to confidentiality, due process, and a fair evaluation of the evidence, but the elder who questioned whether the existing process protected children was publicly marked as someone faithful witnesses should avoid. Whatever explanation Watchtower offered, that contrast was impossible to ignore. A man demanding stronger protection for children had become, in the organization's judgment, a divisive threat. Disfellowshipping also carried a wider message. Bowen said it warned other members about what could happen if they challenged Watchtower publicly. A current elder considering whether to contact journalists, support an affected family, or criticize policy would see not only Bowen's allegations, but the consequences imposed on him. Silence was no longer enforced merely by confidential procedure. It was reinforced by the fear of losing one's community. Bowen's work did not prove every allegation sent to Silentlambs, nor did his experience mean every elder handled every case the same way. Its significance was more fundamental. He transformed scattered private accounts into a public discussion, gave affected individuals a place to speak, and forced Watchtower representatives to defend policies that had rarely faced sustained scrutiny. William Bowen's story began inside a kingdom hall, with an elder reading information that was never intended for the public. He could have filed it away, protected his position, and continued serving. He knew the rules. He understood the value placed on unity. He also knew what challenging an internal decision had already cost him once before. Instead, he resigned, contacted authorities, created Silentlambs, and accepted the consequences of challenging Watchtower publicly. That choice did not make every claim automatically true, and it did not remove the need for evidence. But it forced a question the organization could no longer keep entirely behind closed doors. When a policy protects confidentiality more effectively than it protects a vulnerable child, who is that policy really serving? The most revealing part of William Bowen's story is not simply that he left. It is what he believed he was required to ignore if he wanted to remain. Watchtower could remove his title. It could separate him from the community that had defined his life. But once Bowen understood what institutional silence could mean for a child, silence was the one thing he was no longer willing to